Neil de Beer is with us tonight as the United Independent Movement president, and a lot to talk about then. Let me bring Neil de Beer into the conversation. Neil, welcome to Power Perspective, to Power 98.7. Welcome. How are you?
Good evening, and to your Power listeners. And if I ever write that tell-all autobiography, I'm coming to you because you've just summarized my life. It's a privilege to be with you, Lorraine, to everybody listening, and it's an honor being with
you. Sure. Neil, we've just had a conversation with the ANC that was talking about, its ups and downs, and mainly its downs, and why it is in the GNU, and why we are talking about 100 days within the GNU. And it was one of those interviews I was looking forward to, Neil, before the election, and I'm not sure why it never happened, but it was one of those interviews that we were looking forward, because jy weet, as 'n mens in Afrikaans praat, dan sê hulle, ek het jou op Rian se show gesien, en ek het jou op Diana se show gesien, en toe nie op myne nie, jy weet, and
not on the important one.
Not on the important one, Neil, But Neil, are you good?
Humble apology. I'm well, forgive the cough, I'm suffering that change of weather.
Yeah.
I'm well. I'm the son of the soil, Denzel. I love the way that you say 100 days is nothing in the aspect of the road of freedom of 30 years, and obviously a journey in the ANC of more than 10 years. So I don't just see this 100-day GNU aspect. 100 days. I look at how did we get here, and that old struggle song, Yendi Lenjela Si Hambayo, in a long road. And, I've got a lot of opinions, as you know. I share a lot of my opinion pieces now in public, and I think we can look back at 100 days and say where,
Yeah. And hence, Neil, that is in one of the reasons why you would be here. But I do just want to go through a little bit of who you are and the interesting aspects of your life. A former MK operative, and intelligence, aspect as well to that. A national security advisor to Nelson Mandela, and I think also a stint within defense, right? So
just to clarify, I served in the era of Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
I was one of many national security
and he would have had many, yes.
And obviously he had his own advisors. I actually served as national security advisor, very interesting, to the then newly Department of Arts and Culture of the ANC, Denver. And my job at that stage was, as you remember, we just opened the borders. There was a cultural and sport boycott in this country, as you can remember. And the unbanning of the ANC and myself, it was a decision that we would open the borders to people that would come and do concerts in this country. And obviously because of invitation sent by the ANC to Paul Simon, all those people that came in, I was then the NSA that screened and ensured that those people come safe and leave the country safe under the auspices of the ANC. What a time I had. But that was post my joining of MK in 1988 already.
Yeah.
Because I made up a decision at one time that this was about humanity. This was not about race. This was about humanity, and we needed to restore dignity. So, that's where I come from as a youth, as a young person. And I look back today and I go, what a hell of a...
Was there ever a trust issue? Was there ever, when you work in intelligence and you talk to somebody like Jacob Zuma, for example, there's always the aspect of what intelligence is, who's giving you the intelligence, why is this particular operative here, why, is a person joining, and what would, the strings, that might come attached. Was there ever something of a trust issue, that looks at a young person joining at that particular point and question marks arise and say, I wonder if he wasn't sent. I wonder if, his motives are not as what he says they are.
From day one.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I think today people have their worries and what gets intelligence moves in that thing where we call it like Denzel. I always say to define an intelligence operative, the word they use is spy, but that's a glorified word. But an intelligence operator, a person that can clandestinely, secretly, get information from an opposing agency, an opposing person, use that information and take that info and then use it for any other special purpose as to the handler of that intelligence officer. That's the basic explanation. So you were there to get info, or you were there to take an agent from the other side and turn that person onto your side. So it's a very sensitive issue. It is an issue that could be misused. I came from the South African Defence Force. I came from that regime. My walkover was because I was recruited by the then a gentleman called Jerry, who was a retired now Major General in the police, and a great legend, Andre Lincoln, who both were operatives in the western of the ANC. MK and myself and a gentleman called Brad Stein were recruited, and our book came out about 5 years ago.
I saw it.
It was a bestseller, and it's undercover with Mandela spies, and it tells the story of the journey. But at the end of the day, what we dreamt about was a liberated, free, democratic country, and now here we are today. We've got to look back and say, we really get freedom.
Neil, I want to not to linger on the point, but I need to ask you this then, because you answered it in a way that needs another question. You said from day one, people would have then looked at you and coming from the Defence Force and what your motives would have been, and how did you engage otherwise so that there was the trust factor evaporated, or that people believed your credentials in the end? What does one need to do? What did you particularly need to do so that that trust factor from day one, as you put it, was there? What is there something because otherwise you carry it with your entire time that you would spend with that organization?
Well, you had to earn it. Always can reflect. If there was a plan to destroy one, destroy five. If a plan to attack one, led 4 or 5. Always went beyond the call as a person that then was committed to MK, because I knew they will always look at me, they will always doubt me, and they are rightful to do so. So make no mistake, when I walked into MK and decided to join that liberation fight, I knew that it would be an obvious scenario that I would always be under scrutiny, and therefore had to go and fully commit myself, in actual fact, more than a normal MK member. Because if you look at it, an ANC person that fought in the 1980s, 90s, and 70s, that came from the ANC, if they move into MK, may I call it would be an acceptable matter. So a white Afrikaner boy that was born in Stellenbosch as a farmer, to now get up suddenly at the age of 20, say, I'm going to get up and fight for my opposite race, for someone that is not my color, my creed. It's obvious things would be wrong. But to me, it was a Polish moment. To me, something happened in my life which absolutely made me understand that we were living normal, may I say, white citizen in this country in an indoctrinated state. That we did not know the whole truth, that we didn't understand the Freedom Charter, that people like Mandela existed, that people like Joe Slovo, Ronnie Caswell, Walter Sisulu, Awad Tambu, Governor Mbeki, Kani ever lived, and we never knew the public story of people like Solomon Moshlangu. And it's when I got that breaking view, because I always had an inquisitive mind, Denzel. I was always a person, even at school, that was a rebel. Because I always used to ask, why? Hukum. Hukum. And I never got the answer. And I think that was just always, so when I found the hukum, when I found the why, opened my eyes, and I'm one of those guys that if you first tell me something, and Afrikaans ek is nou moer toe, I am gone. And I then got up and cleared this decision, and as they say in the cliche, it's now history.
Sure. And let's deal with the why. Like you say, you always ask the question why. So years later, you do wake up and you say why, but a different why, because you're in the ANC now and you're a member and various things are happening around you. Two parts to this question, right, Neil? The first part is directed to the conversation we've been having, is to when you decided to leave, would you have suddenly felt that, or people would have suddenly, or you heard it, or people said it, that we always knew, he was he was a sleeper, and then they try to work out how much damage he would have done. So that's the one aspect to the question related to, of course, the interesting movement to the ANC. And then, because you'd have that, it's a natural thing to have when you do leave. People say, yeah, we always knew, we always thought, and then they try to, there's a different story. And then there's the reasons as to why you would have walked away from the ANC ultimately then ahead of the local government elections in 2021 to start a party called, or first you start a movement, the civil society movement, which then becomes a United Independent Party, the UIM, and then you also fight the bigger, broader elections that we saw this year. Just ask first the narrative around you leaving, and then the why. Answer the question as to why you left.
Yeah, I love dealing with you. The questions are just there, Firstly, my MK name was Skanfonto. So, the first thing people would do was call and go, Skanfonto. Ufulando. In or Skanfonto was always a Askar. You get that.
Yeah. Mpimpi and Askari terminology.
Yeah, Mpimpi, Askari. You were always there. You've got to deal with it. And I tell you that if you know me, do my walk in the ANC. Tell you now, Denzel, and still today, will always be that is known to be related to that flag. And I tell you, I was hook, line, sinker, out, bait, rod, this ANC. I gave my life to it. And there was never a dispute. So the people that really know me, that walk the walk with me, would never doubt me. And in actual fact, most of them shared my opinion. They couldn't leave because they were being paid either by government or by the ANC, and not myself. I was never employed by the African National Congress. I was a member, I was a volunteer worker, I was an MK member, and the only time I ever got involved in government was, as you recalled, when I served a period of time with the Deputy Minister of Defence. And it was, yes, sure. And it was a huge thing. People saw I'm leaving. The last person I ever thought would leave. But here's an unknown fact. I saw this ANC term, new ANC. I saw it waver, and when I saw prophecies of Awar Tambo, Tony and Nelson Mandela. When I saw their prophecies come true, here we go again. To get up and fight the previous liberators because they are currently going off course. And obviously, I don't know if you know it, but I ran NEC seat election of the ANC when NDZ and Cyril CR campaign ran, and I ran for NEC as the last attempt to change the ANC from within.
Neil, pause there. Pause for a second. Neil, pause for a second. Neil, you were beginning to say, Neil, that you then begun to look at a position within the structures, the formal structures, now the leadership structures of the ANC, and that would have been as an NEC member of the NEC, but of the ANC. That never materialized, and you would have then thought, okay, I've tried, and I've put everything in, and it's like somebody doing a job application after working their butt off and not getting the job, and then having to make a decision. Is that how you felt?
Yeah, so Denzel, I drove 9 provinces for 8 months. I went branch for branch. I had the ANC Women's League, the ANC Youth League, and the MK Veteran Support in my NEC-ship. I went to Congress, that famous Congress at Nazareth, and CR1. I lost the vote seat to be nominated by a mere 16 votes. I got onto the aeroplane, the longest journey back, and I knew as I flew back from Joburg, I am now lost to the ANC. I knew it, but that was long before I then got politically active, and I basically came home, become dormant. Saddest, I went into business, and as everybody know, I then was the president of an international fund for Africa for 6 years, and it kind of went past me. I refocused my energy on a continent I love, a continent that I built, and I knew it was over for me, but not without that last fight. So that was the story of leaving the ANC already mentally in those days. And many people knew I lost him, to be honest. I lost a ex-cabinet minister. Saw me 4 years later in a hotel and said to me, you know, Neil, why you didn't get in? And I said, I would love you to tell me. And she said, by many, you were deemed to be too honest. Wow.
You were deemed to be too honest.
Too honest. And I walked out of that DNA.
Still a trust factor, Neil. So even after all those years, still a trust factor.
But I would love that certificate. Can you imagine? You are told that the charge against you is you are too bloody honest. I'll take it. I'll frame it. I will take that to my grave.
So Neil, of course, there's now the United Independent Movement, and it's growing. You're somebody who does not shy away from controversy. You're somebody who does not shy away from, wherever there needs to be something vocally said or something done, you're engaging that, and so you begin to fight local government and national elections. Let's just go back to these the national elections of May 29, and you're standing for, is it mayor of the Western Cape?
No, that was the local government.
Local government, yes, yeah. But this time around in 2024
was national.
Yeah, national. What happens? You're campaigning. You're out there. You're putting the messages out there. What happens? What do you find that you bump into, or what is it that the status quo says to you? You know what, Neil? These are the numbers you're going to get. What did you get? You got you got 20,000.
No. We got 38,000.
38,000, right?
38,000. We were shy 8,000 votes.
Ooh, okay.
But we weren't shy. I know that we got it. Let me explain.
Yeah.
Prior to the election, I'm a leader of the multi-party charter. First,
Yeah.
I joined the multi-party charter with the DA, the Freedom Front, IFP, ISANCO, ACDP. We became the multi-party and Action SA.
Yeah.
So don't forget there was a year build-up.
You had booked your ticket to the Moon Pact.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a joke, actually. Because it was reaching for the moon. But can I tell you, and don't be shocked,
Yeah.
when John Steenhuisen, who I worked with for a year and a half,
Yeah.
and it's different when you work with someone than what you see someone from a distance. I always laugh. In the speech or in the halls of power, we fight like dogs, and afterwards we share tea and biscuits. So make no mistake, the person out there and the person behind the door are not the same person, except for Neil de Beer. Again, I'm too blatantly honest. I don't switch off your moi patel. So, we went through the multi-party charter. We aimed to do what we needed to do because that was the different parties signifying identity, is to remove the ANC. I pegged the ANC at 45, Denzel. I said, no way, lower than 45, 46%, and boy, were we surprised. But I left the multi-party charter on the second week prior to the end of the election because it was then already clear that GNU discussions or coalition discussions were taking place with several parties that we were aligned to. And I made my promise, I gave my word, that I would not do that. And yeah, it cost me. It cost us as a party. But here's the thing, Denzel. I will sacrifice power. I will sacrifice position before I sacrifice my word. And that is all I have. So, yeah, we had to go to the election. It did cost us. The other thing that we had to realize, as a new party, funding is, what can I say? They buy elections. I mean, there's no other word. The one with the money gets the power. That is it, Denzel. And it's not just the South African patent. Whoever has the money follows what they call the golden rule. And what is the golden rule? The golden rule is whoever has the gold rule. So plain and simply, hulle het ons moet toegekoop, jou mali, not in die fella imali, ufuda imali. So when you come to money, no, you gone.
The golden rule.
The Lord. So the golden rule is if you got the gold, you rule. So plain and simply, I didn't have enough gold. I'm not that part of the DBF.
You couldn't rule.
I don't rule. So the only thing you do, if you have a person that rules you, you beg for a little of the scraps of the table. So, there I am. I'm in the fight. I'm going to change the world. And then you come back home like George Foreman that got beaten up by Muhammad Ali.
Round 8.
And they asked George Foreman after the fight, you just lost the heavyweight title. You're bleeding. What do you need to be the champion again? He said, give me one more round. And I felt like that.
You needed one more election.
I need one more election. But now I'm becoming like a politician. So just one more election. And, I take that away and I go, okay, lessons learned. And I'm telling you, after being nearly 3.5 years now in direct politics, the stuff I see, the stuff I hear, Denzel, it will make people, I nearly said rugby balls turn to raisins.
Do you still believe, Neil, that the ANC? I was listening to you on Rian's show, and Rian's a good friend. I worked with him at Jacaranda, and I heard him laughing and the conceptualizing of how you engaged, how the ANC engages and runs an election versus how you or the Freedom Front or the DA would run an election. And the terminology was they do logistics. And
Amen.
Explain the logistics element to our listeners, Neil de Beer.
It's very simple. You know, I at one stage said, if you are serious about beating the ANC power, you cannot have a Western mentality, Denzel. You are in Africa, my brother. And if you're going to go think that standing on a podium and doing huge advocacies of policies and rhetoric, you are in the wrong continent, in the wrong country, in the wrong election. That's
In the wrong election.
No, my brother, you're in the wrong country, in the wrong election.
Yeah.
And this is how the ANC and now the other groupings of the mutations of the ANC, be it the EFF or Umkhonto, the modern MK. They are all using the same tactic. And what is it? The ANC does not do politics in elections. They do it. They do logistics. And what does that mean? Denzel, move people from Ikaya to the voting box and back. And in between moving you from point A to B, they give you the T-shirt, they give you the cap, they give you the poster, and unkuku, no charge. And they give you food. So let us not start to talk utter rubbish. This is the truth. You know it, and I know it. But it is the only form in a country where you are based rurally, where the majority of the people, with respect, are impoverished. To get their votes, you have to have a tactic. And the ANC, after 30 years, more than 6 elections, in my opinion, they've got the machinery right. But what did they get wrong this time? I'll tell you what they got wrong. The person that perfected mass mobilization in this country under his brand, under his way of doing things, which is a charismatic way, is Umsholosi. And all that Umsholosi did with his tactical team is they copy and pasted the ANC logistical chart. They got bigger tents, they got more food, they got more rah-rah.
They got bigger buses.
Beat the ANC and bigger buses. And that's it.
Where does... I have to ask this, Neil. Where does, because the question I also wanted to ask is, you've worked with John Steenhuisen in the multi-party charter, and obviously also you've suggested, that somebody behind closed doors is not the same individual that you would see in public. So I'm really interested in having an opinion of what John Steenhuisen and his appeal or non-appeal, and how you view him. But just also, the DA has an aspect of a racial conceptualization around it. And that's how sometimes, from whence we come, our historical context, people still vote within racial patterns. And when I say Neil de Beer, there's a very, very close or understanding that Neil de Beer would probably be Afrikaans. And if you take, would the name be Albertus to make the point? So you've got this racial conceptualization around elections as well. And the DA, there's a narrative that says, well, they're a white party who are interested in white issues, who are interested in white people, and that is where they're going to end at the end of the day. Neil de Beer, you might have bumped into those same kind of problems, with the United Independent Movement. Where do you put race? Just talking about logistics around elections, where do you put the element of race?
You'll never get away from it. I mean, you can imagine that we are saying, as a people, Denzel. Now remember, you're not talking to a normal white guy. I'm telling you straight. So it's difficult to talk to me because I'm absolutely biased to what I stood for. So let's put that way. You put me in a room, I will have a discussion. I'm intellectual enough. You know, in a African terminology, I don't know if you remember, there was a word called umkhobolo. Umkhobolo is the study of political knowledge. Now, the problem we've got is I come from the school of Owartambo. You know, the stalwarts, the Governor Bekis, the Kgalema Moshantes. Do you understand that era were people that were absolutely credible in the sense of teaching you political studies. So I've got a more in-depth understanding as a white individual who grew up most of his time in the city of Mthatha. You know, that went through a cultural scenario of understanding who's the Abatembu, who spent, may I tell you, years with the now king, Usabata Dalanyebo's son, Uboilakala. Because I wanted to understand, what am I fighting for? And I'm more of a culturalist than what I am a pragmatist of a politician. So race will always in this country be a sensitive issue. And if we don't get it, if we don't understand it, harm.
How do you,
this is the reality.
So then, Neil, that's your reality then, in a sense. You could be, and you could do whatever you need to do. At the end of the day, if I'm listening to your argument, people would view you as white Afrikaans and somebody who maybe is not aligned to their interests and their concerns, and then potentially the majority of this country wouldn't vote for either you or for the United Independent Movement then. And that would be a reality you'd have to live with as a political party and as an individual then, if that's the scenario.
But why would they vote? Because some did vote. And some voted out of color, out of race, and out of political boundaries. They decided that they want something new, Denzel. And the outcome of this election proved one thing categorically, that not one singular party, be it big or small, be it 30 years or 1 year, got the mandate from the Republic of South Africa. Finished. This is a fact. So we're going into an era where you've got to now sit back and ask for once in our lifetime, what do the people want? Where did we go wrong? What is the SWOT analysis that made us not being able to move the poor to middle class center? Why could we not change informal settlements to formal? Why can we not get 28 million of SASSA?
Why can't we? Why can't we, Neil?
Because the African National Congress was never built and was never designed to accept that governance is the future. They're struggling to get out of a liberation movement. That's it.
How does one operate within a GNU, thinking that so they stuck within a liberation perspective and they can't get out of it if you know that's the argument. How does one then begin to get to a place called a GNU? Because that's where they are at the moment. That's what the numbers gave them, and that's what they're having to work with. They're having to work with John Steenhuisen, who sits right there in cabinet, and you know he's also one of those. As they look at him and see him, he is very much the person who says, I'd love to be the next government in this country. I'd love to be the next president in this country. And that's just the reality of politics. So they're having to deal with him in a GNU, understanding that he's also there to bite them in the butt whenever he can.
We had sporadic firsts in this country, Denzel. we had a 9/4 scenario. We had a change of government. That was new. You will remember this is not the first GNU. There was a GNU.
Yeah, with FW de Klerk, with Mangosuthu Buthelezi.
Absolutely. But it only lasted 3 to 4 years. Because the National Party, I think people forget, they actually switched the light off and joined the ANC. So the question, I think, is forget about leaders. Forget about Neil de Beer and John Steenhuisen. Forget about Schlabisa and Groenewald and Ramaphosa. Talk about the institutions they lead. This is what I'm getting at. Because there will always be a new king. But the government, the state, the people, the de facto people we serve, they are not looking at an individual, yet they are currently voting for them. So if you look at the total swath of the poster of MK, it is Jacob Zuma. It's Cyril. It's Neil de Beer. It's John Steenhuisen. It's Schlabisa. But here's the thing. Will the GNU, not just because of leadership, but because of the principles of the party, will that stand the test of time? Now, the thunderclouds are coming. And they're coming as soon as 2027, Denzel. Because
which is
change in leadership.
Yeah, which is election. Yeah, you've got local government elections and then you've got national elections.
Well, no, you've got local government elections 2026, but you've got ANC conference 2027. Now, when you say, is the GNU holding? Absolutely it is. Is there a change of mood and mode? Well, even if it's out of desperation, even if it's out of necessity, they are keeping it together, Denzel. And you will have protectors, and you will have the people that are pro it. That's normal. But what is the current benefit to citizen X? What is Lucy, Vuyu, Andries, and Herman? What are they getting out of the GNU? And the question we must ask is, are the ministries, like Umchunu, Home Affairs Leon Schreiber, McPherson within the building structure, Proctor within Schlabisa, are there changes? Can you see movement? Is there a better atmosphere in the country? And the answer is yes.
That's my question, Neil. My question is, and I want you to look at it two ways, Neil. I want you to look at it from the United Independent Movement, selfishly from that particular aspect, and say, I'm not in the GNU, I'm out, I didn't get the number of votes, and so I'm not allowed onto the playing field. That's the one particular aspect. And then look at it from a citizenry point of view and have an understanding of whether it's working or not. From a United Independent Movement, is there a feeling that, let them go on. We will struggle here on our own and do our thing. But from a citizenry perspective, you're all in, and you're supportive of the GNU.
The UIM has one word, and if I say you that word, then you will understand where I am. Accountability. I didn't get into politics because I want to wealthy. I made my money as a businessman out of this country. I'm not dependent on politics to keep my mouth shut, and I don't. So I took that to my party and I said, be Parliament or out. Be outside Parliament or in. The word is accountability. I will keep the GNU accountable as I would have done sitting in Parliament. And I do it now as a commentator outside, and more effectively because if the DA is wrong, Denzel, I unleash hell. If the ANC is wrong, I unleash it. But I've got more freedom probably to do that than what the cabinet ministers who serve a president are sitting there and trying to keep the thing together, because I tell you, it's not an easy task. So as UIM, I am finding myself comfortable. I've got 3 metros where I've got 3 councillors, Cape Town, Joburg, and eThekwini. I am gathering my strength. I'm going back to the drawing board because my voice is heard For the UIM, we are a moderate entity. We are not a left or a right. We are a moderate entity.
In the middle.
And we understand that. We are in the middle. I'm not in the middle. I do not spew rhetoric, Denzel.
Okay.
I don't use race-based politics. I'm over that. I want the economy to turn. So as a UIM, GNU, I'm actually at the right place at the right time. But as citizens, Neil de Beer, I'm sitting back and I'll tell you, every day I wake, probably like you and everybody is, the first thing I watch is what's the next scandal? What's the next threat? What's the next blah, blah? No, I'm serious. I must tell you, I wake up in a shudder of sweat to wonder, is there going to be another twist, another threat, another break? Is Fakile going to get up and then attack Helen, and is Helen going to move him with her broom? So you know what? Let me quickly tell you. I shudder because I'm worried that the stability of the GNU isn't coming to settlement. And I hope it holds, and it must hold, because it is what is currently at play. I shudder to think what is the alternative.
Neil de Beer, I'm going to say thank you so much for a really interesting conversation, and it's one we need to have more and more and more, Neil, and beyond the 100 days and further into the development of politics and other aspects that of course engage us as we wake up. Like you say, you wake up every day and you think, because the wheel turns every day. And so, Neil, we've started the ball rolling now, and obviously, we're going to reach out and say, hey, Neil, let's chat again. And I'd like that.
Can I use your radio program and your radio station name quickly in a cliche?
Yeah.
If we don't return power back to the people, if we don't return effective power of our country to the people, doesn't matter if it's a GNU or a SPNU or a LNU, it won't work. And I think you and people like us an opportunity to give a different perspective, to open people's eyes. You do more in this country than any politician, so power to you and power to the listeners. I look forward to the next one. I think you got a bit more than what was expected.
Neil de Beer, we do different things. We do things differently on Power Perspective and Power 98.7, and hence I've enjoyed the conversation. I'm going to say thank you so much, Neil.
Thanks, Denzel. God bless, and to your listeners, a luta continua.
Thank you, Neil de Beer, United Independent Movement President Neil de Beer. There he is. From the perspective of a small party, what do you make of the GNU?
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.